Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Football Countdown. I'm Ryan Coop here alongside Trey Colbeck and Adam Stewart. Welcome one and all to our Week 1 2022 CFL recap. We've got actual football to talk about here on the Canadian Football Countdown for once. It's so exciting. The games are underway, and it was an exciting first week of the season. We had a couple close games and a blowout to end off the week. We'll go through it all here tonight. We'll talk about the main storylines from each game, give our updated power rankings because we know everybody loves those, and our players of the week here as well. Before I bring in the rest of the panel, I do want to mention we are a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network, and as always, want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Zodo, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Check out facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB for more info on our presenting sponsor. Now let's bring in the other members of the panel. First, we've got the great Trey Colbeck. Trey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, guys. And like you said, really excited to actually talk football. No more CBA talk, and it's only live games from now on.
Yes, very exciting to talk actual football here. Here to do so with us as well is the great Adam Stewart. Adam, how are you tonight?
I'm not sure if I'm as good as the guys out in BC after watching that game against Edmonton, but hey, I'll try to be. I mean, it was a great week of CFL football. I'm glad we get to talk about it here and now. So.
Yeah, let's dive right into it. We got a lot to talk about from week number 1. Week started off Thursday night with the Montreal Alouettes going into Calgary to face the Stampeders. Calgary takes a 30-27 win here over Montreal in this game. Let's go through the major storylines we saw from this one. Obviously, I think one of the main ones to talk about is the tragic injury to one William Stanback, one of the top running backs in the CFL, one of the most explosive players in the game, goes down, I want to say early second quarter with a real nasty injury near the goal line, and clearly a leg injury, looks like a knee. He's on the 6th game now. I know that I wouldn't be surprised if he's done for the year. Alouettes fans, not too happy. Week 1, that definitely does a detriment to your team there. But Jeshron Antwi comes in, and the very next play runs for 70 flipping yards down the field, and one of the most impressive runs I've seen in a long time. Seemed like there was a little bit of extra oomph on it. What do you guys make of this start to the year here for Montreal, the devastating injury, and where they go from here, and how they managed to still pull it out for a close game here? Let's start with you, Adam.
I really feel terrible for Montreal fans right away. I mean, it's William Stanback injury, of course, fractured ankle, had to undergo surgery today on it. Haven't heard any results, but we definitely all hope that William Stanback will be a big part of the Montreal Alouettes end of season run when they are pushing for first place, please, because I still have that predicted. They played a good game against the Stampeders. Vernon Adams got off fairly well, had some good yardage. Actually, their backup running back, Jeshron Antwi, I hope I say that right, also had a very good game, actually. If you take a look at him, he had 7 carries for 98 yards, 14 yards a carry average. I mean, he had a good stat line overall, even though William Stanback is missing. The receiving core had a good run, 112 yards for Eugene Lewis. Just overall a good day for the Montreal Alouettes. However, Calgary came back, and the fact is they were a kick short. Trey, how about you? What do you think of the game?
No, I liked it too, and like we're all saying, we hope Stanback comes back, but next man up, and Jeshron Antwi goes for that 70-yard run, and picked up just shy of 100 on the day, and that's not too bad for being only playing like a half. And I really liked what I'm high on Montreal's offense. Vernon Adams Jr., like I've talked about, is kind of one of my top quarterbacks in this league, and we all saw his athleticism, and I think he just needs to work on his arm a little bit, but he's got the receiving core. He's definitely got the team around him. And looking at that other side of the ball, we all talked what Bo Levi we were going to get. And, he also left with a little – he seemed to be fine, I heard today, with that practice. But, he did live with an ankle injury, didn't hit 200 yards passing. I feel like I don't want to say, like, if Montreal had won, I think I wouldn't give Montreal the win. I'd give Calgary the loss. But, kickers would matter, and Calgary got the win late.
Yeah, Montreal, they, like you said, rallied good at wide receiver. Jake Winnipeg a little quiet in this game, which was surprising, only 37 yards receiving for him, but traditional Eugene Lewis there. And on the other side of the ball, Bo Levi Mitchell started the game really well. I think early in this game, first drive, he marched all the way down the field, and we're thinking Bo's back, Bo's ready to go. And then as the game goes along, we see things struggling a little bit more, the offense slowing up a little bit. He does end up leaving the game late. Jake Mayer comes in at quarterback, goes 4 for 5, 57 yards, and, they pull out the win. He's probably thinking at this point, I'm going to be the top backup leading a late game winning drive of the week. Well, that didn't last too many more games after that. But the guy who really, I thought really shined in this game for Calgary is a guy who's so underrated and has been, looked at as third, fourth man up on the depth chart for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's Richie Sindani at wide receiver. Everybody talks about Reggie Bagleton. Everybody talks about Kamar Jordan. Sindani comes in 7 catches, 9 targets, 101 yards, leading receiver for the Stampeders in the game. You love to see it, and that's something Calgary's always been good at, is finding the like we talked about with Montreal's running backs, next man up, so to say, at receiver. No Markeith Ambles, no Josh Huff this year. Could this be more of a role for Richie Sindani? I liked what I saw from him there. What do you guys think?
I really liked him. Looked really well in this game. I mean, had some big runs, had some good yards after catch is the big thing with Richard Sindani. And had a really good game. And just simply had a very, like I said before, had a good game. Probably a guy you might want to consider more in fantasy. He wasn't a bad option going ahead here. So I know I didn't much think of him, but hey, there's one for you. So Trey, what did you think of the of Sindani?
Yeah, I like him. He averaged 14.4 yards a catch. So picking up a first down every time he gets the ball, you can't be mad with that. And the longest was 20 yards. So yeah, big plays, kept the ball moving. And on a team that Calgary usually spreads out the ball, it looked like Bo Levi had they still pretty spread out the ball. It just, he seemed to be catching most of the ones coming his way. So it's good to see. And, he could have been the difference maker in this one.
Yeah, for sure. Kadeem Carey, also a big game for him. Two touchdowns on the ground, got involved in the receiving game, one of the top running backs of the week. In terms of fantasy plays in this game, who got you the most value was Joshua Antwi at 5.76 points per $1,000. If anybody picked Joshua Antwi in CFL fantasy, please send us a note. I would like to know who you are, what your psychic abilities, full capacity is. And are you free to help me with this week's fantasy team? Because you can't predict that coming in. Richie Sindani was the next highest. Malik Henry for Calgary, another receiver who had a touchdown early in this game. Big week for him. Reggie White Jr., an underrated value play for the Alouettes. Kadeem Carey, Sean Bain. So a couple Calgary receivers that you don't necessarily expect having themselves good weeks. On the other end of things, worst value plays in fantasy for the week. Reggie Bagleton had the lowest for his price. Jake Winnipeg, Kamar Jordan, Bo Levi Mitchell, William Stanback, and Vernon Adams Jr. Now, these are the stars on each of these teams, right? Which one of these guys surprises you the most that had an off day here in week one, Trey?
I guess I'd go with Reggie Bagleton, kind of the guy, kind of the number one receiver there, or Kamar Jordan, kind of put them together. Like you would think that those would be the two guys Bo would be leaning on in a close game, but instead he seemed to lean on a guy that no one really saw coming. So I'd say the receiving core other than Richard Sindani is kind of the biggest shock for me. What about you, Adam?
Actually, I'm going to go with Bo Levi Mitchell. He had a good game overall, and it looked like he was having a good game. But when you see the stat line, 199 yards passing for Bo Levi Mitchell, kind of really kind of surprising on that part. And 21 to 34, accuracy's not the worst at 61%, but still, I don't know if those are quite Bo Levi numbers. And I don't want to say that Bo Levi is not going to be successful or anything like that. I just want to say that, not quite Bo Levi numbers that you actually are expecting, even though it looked like he was having an okay game.
Yeah, so this leads to, I know people were already asking the questions at the end of this game, right? As well, if Bo's in a walking boot and Jake Maier is coming in and playing well, are we going to see Jake Maier coming into week 2? Or is it time to turn the ball over to Jake Maier? We're going to hear that game in and game out throughout the season. Like, the noise is not going to stop. But assuming he's healthy and ready to go, you start Bo Levi Mitchell in week number 2, right?
Oh, yeah. You got to start Bo Levi. He's a veteran. He's the leader in that locker room still. You got to start Bo, I would think. Let's face it, you do have the option, though, I guess. Jake Mahar definitely is 4 of 5 on the one drive, really, that he had to be in there for and looked really good. But let's face it, when you got a veteran like Bo, you go with Bo. Right, Drake?
Yeah, I think the question more is how long of a leash does he have after the game starts? Like, I think he'll be number 1 on the depth chart. I think he'll get the opportunity in the first quarter. But, if a game in a couple of weeks, when you start seeing a little tougher teams in Montreal, how long is that leash? But I definitely think he'll be your starter unless he's, on the IR. So.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And on the other side of things, Montreal coming into next week, I think the question is, can they find a little bit more balance? 24 points in the first half, 3 points down the stretch. Like, they had the lead going into the half in this game. They were in full control, but they let it slip up there near the end. So we'll see where that leads for Montreal. Taking a look at the bets on this game from last week, how did we end up in the betting category on this one, Trey?
This one, you guys both took Calgary to beat the spread. I took Montreal to cover. Montreal did cover 3.5. They only lost by 3. So you guys started off the weekend 0-1. I started 1-0, but yeah, we did actually. We'll talk about it later, but we all did pretty well over the weekend. So, pretty happy with that.
That pesky point spread, that 0.5 point difference. Come on.
That half a point, man. It gets you every time.
Every time, yeah.
If the ball goes like half out of bounds on a single, is that half a point?
I've never heard of this word. Is anybody else?
No, I've never heard of that one.
Constantly reinventing the game, increasing offense by giving half points for ridiculous things. Let's move on to our second game of the week here. It was the defending Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Ottawa Redblacks. Paul LaPolice returning to Winnipeg for the first time since 2019. Ottawa and Winnipeg did not play each other last year. This was a great football game. I thought this was a really good game here. I enjoyed it quite a bit between these two sides. Let's start with you here, Adam. What was the overall storyline in this one for you?
I think the overall storyline for me would have been Jeremiah Mazzoli. The guy came in. He was probably not expected to really do much against a really stout Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense, and ended up having a very, very good game. Almost 70%, or maybe even more. Just got to take a look here, but 70.6% completion percentage, 380 yards and a touchdown against the defending Grey Cup champions. Just had a very good game and definitely showed for it. Plus, also the other one that I'd like to bring up is Jalen Acklin. Had a massive game for the Ottawa Redblacks, 143 yards, and really just looked decent really good the whole game. And Winnipeg, let's face it, I think it was also a little bit of Winnipeg. I don't know if they're just maybe Grey Cup, the hangover is starting to happen finally in Winnipeg, or if they were just maybe a little nervous because that banner is in the ring, or in the arena that night. Either way, what did you think of it, Trey?
Yeah, I'm going to talk the other side of the ball. You say Jalen Acklin. I'm going to say Winston Rose blew that defense. Like, he got burned 3-4 times, and that's not something like us in Winnipeg are used to. I don't know if I want to say it was a Grey Cup hangover. Winnipeg's that team. That's why I was really nervous about that point spread, 9.5, because they're not a team that's going to win big. They manage the game, and they put themselves in the position a lot that wins by that field goal or a touchdown. So I'm not hitting the warning labels yet. But Winston Rose, a guy who has been one of those names on that defense the last few years. Did he not leave to Cincinnati, or am I getting that mixed up?
No, that's correct. Yeah, he did. And then he came back last season.
Yeah, he had an NFL shot, comes back late last year. That's not those kind of things that he usually does. So I don't know if because you would think after the NFL stint, you would be more sharp, not less sharp. But yeah, he did not look himself. He was getting beat by like 20 yards sometimes, Ryan, right? Like it was unreal. What do you think?
Yeah, it was definitely noticeable. And I think, I have to wonder because he has been injured. He wasn't a walking boot in practice for the past couple of weeks. I was actually surprised to see him in the lineup. And I'm not surprised at all that Paul LaPolice said, let's just target that direction over and over again. We saw Winston Rose get beat deep during the preseason, I think, in at least one or two games there as well. So, I don't think he's 100% healthy. I'll chalk some of the, bad play up to that maybe a little bit here. But you got to give credit to Ottawa for that one for, going to the well over and over again because it was working. My overall storyline on this game was, yes, Winnipeg pulls out the win and, championship teams tend to find a way to win games. And I would definitely say this was one of them. I'm sure we'll in a second talk about the wild ending to this one. But overall, Ottawa played the better game by far and away. I was there, Trey was there. We saw it firsthand live. Over and over, Ottawa seemed to be dominating most of the play in this game, but just a couple of small mistakes. And maybe that's still a team, that has a bunch of flashy new pieces that's still trying to build its chemistry and things like that. Although you would think Jeremiah Mazzoli and Jalen Acklin would already have that chemistry. Because wide open Acklin in the first quarter, I think it was, should have taken it for a touchdown, drops the ball there. A couple other drops. I'm thinking of a dropped interception that would have been a pick six for Ottawa. This game was more Ottawa losing than Winnipeg winning, so to say, I would think. Adam, what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. But, I was watching one other neat little thing that just kind of interests me. Winnipeg only had 50 yards rushing the whole game. That's the quarterback, the two running backs. I think that's also a couple flies. It was not a running game for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for this one. Now, we're used to seeing the Bombers get 100-plus yards a game and usually always have that favorable field position. This time here, Zach Collaros had to start being a little more creative, as we would say. Had to make those longer passes or had to start running for it like we seen at the end of the game. And, that was a little scary to see what happened to Zach Collaros at the end of the game. Fortunately, I don't think he's hurt or anything. I think everything's all good. But, Trey, you want to talk a little bit more about that last play for Zach?
What an idiot. Why is he jumping head first? He had the first down. If he did coming from a baseball player, I know how to slide into second. You slide feet first. I don't know who the Ottawa player was, but if he comes down, then that's a 15-yard. It was the dumb play on Collaros' part. And honestly, when I heard it, when he got yanked, I'm like, it's the right call. He should have never even gotten up off the field. I know why he did. I get that. I'm surprised the injury spotter took the time he did to get him off the field. It was the right call. Stupid play. I couldn't. Again, as a baseball player and a football player, I'm watching that. I'm like, why are you doing head first? It's one thing if that was Grey Cup, or playoffs, late year. Why are you doing that? Ryan, you were there too. What did you see on that one?
Well, next to doing the wave, especially when your team is on offense, my least favorite thing about a live sporting experience is the incessant booing of every call or decision that doesn't go your way, even when it's legitimate. And that's what this was to me. People were obviously very upset that their starting quarterback had to come out of the game for 3 plays when I think the Bombers were down at this point, right? Because they had the comeback winning field goal. And people were pretty upset about that. And I understand why, but at the same time, like, Collaros gets up off the field, walks away from the rest of his team, and is standing there like staring at the ground, clearly like not sensical in this moment. And should be coming off the field. And I think it was cool. I don't remember another time I've seen the command center all of a sudden take a player out, the injury spotter. That was great to see. I think it was a clean play because he dove head first. He should have slid. That one's on Collaros to me. Sucked to see it, but then the legend himself, Drew Brown, comes in. We talked a lot about throughout the preseason who's getting the backup job. Is it Drew Brown? Is it Dakota Prukop? Prukop played a role in this game too with the short yardage plays a little bit, but Brown gets the backup job. Comes in here, barely any CFL experience, goes a perfect 3 for 3, 51 yards on the final drive. Mark Leggio hits the game-winning field goal. What an ending here. Clearly, we have a QB controversy in Winnipeg coming into week 2. I think this is Drew Brown's team we need to run with. I left my sarcasm sign around here somewhere. I don't know where. That is sarcasm, most definitely, but a wild ending here. Adam, what did you think of that ending?
Yeah, it was crazy. I really enjoyed that ending of the game quite a bit, and I didn't really care for the Zach Collaros dive head first. I mean, it was a great imitation of his offensive coordinator, Buck Pierce. I don't want to see what happens to him afterwards as well, because that was scary. But no, Drew Brown came in. He showed that he can manage an offense at least for a couple drives and can keep the field moving. And that's all you can ask out of your backup quarterback. He's the reason he's the most popular player on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He proved it again. And just like everybody, the backup quarterback's always your most favorite player. So, but that being said, Trey, what else did you see out of the Bomber Ottawa game?
I just want to bring up, because we're talking about hits to the head. The other one, there was one on Dalton Schoen. And someone made a point. It was, I forget his name, the Bomber podcast guy.
Our good buddy, Zach.
Yeah, him. He asked a question on Twitter, is that play not reviewable? Because I think Dalton Schoen got hit more in the head earlier on that fumble than Collaros did. And I don't know the rule, but because the ball became ripped out, does that make him no longer the ball carrier? Is that where it, because the ball carrier you would think would be reviewable, right? But because I don't know about that one either. I think it was a clean play too, but I call it more dirty than the Collaros one. So that was my kind of question there. What you guys thought on that one? Was it because the ball got ripped out half a second sooner?
I also don't know what I don't know what the official ruling is there either. It wouldn't surprise me if there's such a nitpicky thing in the CFL rule book about this of, he wasn't the ball carrier, right? So that seems like a logical explanation to me on that one.
That's the only. Other than that, I thought this game was, great first Friday night game. Winnipeg, like I said, they're never going to win by big. Usually, that's not been their motive over the last few years. They win these tight ones late, even if they do some turnovers, even if their defense gets burned, they find a way to win. But Ottawa's scary. Ottawa, I think, is very scary. If Mazzoli, like we said earlier, Mazzoli, Evans, who should have Hamilton taken, who should have Ottawa taken, kind of thing. On this after week 1, they're both 0-1, but it's still it's going to be a good season to see what happens there.
Yeah, I tweeted this during the game. Night and day difference between the Redblacks offense in 2021 and 2022. Granted, it's one game so far, and I think we did have some concerns maybe about Winnipeg's secondary coming into this season with some of the injuries there, but Mazzoli looked comfortable. He had plenty of time going up against the defense that I know is missing Jackson Jeffcoat, but you still got Willie Jefferson there on the defensive line. You got Adam Bakehill coming through the middle as well. I thought Mazzoli had a lot of time. He moved well with his legs, which is really something he's good at, and I think the Paul LaPolice system is ideal for the type of quarterback that Jeremiah Mazzoli is. And I think he found a good mix of receivers. We talked about Jalen Acklin, Darvin Adams, former Bomber, big game for him this week as well. And, Shaq Johnson's a guy who I think went very underrated in BC for many years and pitched in nicely in this game for Ottawa here as well. He had 43 yards and a touchdown there. So I was high on what Ottawa did, both on offense and on defense. I mean, shutting down Brady Oliveira to 10 carries for 17 yards, a 1.7 yard average. That is a pretty good start here for Ottawa. And now these two teams play each other again next week, which is very interesting. And we'll get into that on our Wednesday preview show. But early in the week, I'm telling you, I'm taking the split on this because I am high on what Ottawa did in this game, despite coming out with the loss. You fix those couple mistakes up. This is going to be a much better season for the Redblacks than it was last year. Adam?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the defending Grey Cup champions, yet, Ottawa, being the team that was so poor last year, really looked good against them. And props to Paul LaPolice. He played a good game against a very tough Winnipeg Blue Bomber football team. He had the guys prepared. He was ready to go. And I think we'll get to preparedness a little later on here. But yeah, no, I thought that Ottawa had a good game plan. And can't wait to see what happens this next week here against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for round 2.
Looking at the fantasy plays of the week, Dalton Schoen was the top value play in this game. I believe you had him in your lineup, Trey, for the week, correct? Yep. Almost 5 points for every $1,000 you spent on him. Shaq Johnson, around 4 points per 1,000. Jalen Ackland, Darvin Adams. Dakota Prukop hit the full value play. I mentioned it on the preview show last week. You should take Dakota Prukop. I'm glad I didn't and went with Nathan Rourke instead. But you would have gotten at least full value out of him. Guy who didn't crack the list here, Greg Ellingson, I thought had a great game for the Bombers, his debut there. Zach Collaros and him clearly had a connection. Hot take after week 1 of the season, I think Ellingson finishes with more receiving yards than Kenny Lawler of the Edmonton Elks in 2022. I think we're going to see him be the go-to guy for Collaros all season long. Top 5 fantasy letdowns in this game. Well, Drew Wolotarski did not get a catch in this one. Johnny Augustine, nothing going on the offense there for him. Nick Dembski, Rashid Bailey, and Zach Collaros all with disappointing fantasy days for their price totals. So Bombers squeak out the win in this one, but it was a hard-fought, low-scoring win here. How do we do on the betting lines in this one, Trey?
Yeah, so we all 3 of us took Ottawa plus 9.5. If anyone took my advice and bet the life savings on Ottawa, you were so close to having a good payday. But no, they couldn't squeak that one out. But we covered there. So at this point, I'm 2-0, and you guys are 1-1 after Friday. Yeah, pretty good start, guys. Not gonna lie, 1-1's not bad for first week. So yeah.
All right, let's move on to our third game of the week. Trey and I were at the second one. Adam, I believe you were at the third one here. The Saskatchewan Roughriders hosting the Hamilton Tiger Cats. 30-13 win for the hometown team. Adam, take us away. What was the storyline here for you in this game?
Well, I think the big storyline was both 12 guys on the one side of the field for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Essentially, the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense was absolutely dominant and just started right from play 1 with a almost interception from rookie Nelson Lacombo. From the second play of the series being a forced fumble by Pete Robertson and a recovery by the Riders. I mean, this game here, I think the way I tweeted it out was the offense is offensive and the defense is defensive, because that's literally what this game was. The Hamilton Tiger Cats just looked helpless out there against that front line of the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense. The secondary was very good, except for Nick Dembski or Nick Marshall's one play that he always keeps missing, which ended up being a 75-yard touchdown for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Always has one. Anyways, other than that, though, Cody Fajardo had a reasonable game. I mean, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. The Riders had a little bit of offensive life in the fourth quarter, and that namely was the story of it. But everything was set up by defense, essentially. Shaq Evans had a very good game as well. And then, other than that, it was just overall a pretty good game for the Roughriders. If you're a green and white fan, And yes, I think later on, Monty, don't worry, I'll get to that dirtiest hit of the week that no one's talking about. Trey, what was your thoughts of the game?
No, I liked it too, and I liked Fajardo's play. That defense definitely kept them in it, but over 300 yards and a touchdown and one on the ground. I like Cody Fajardo, and he's got to lead this team if they want to beat Winnipeg and Calgary and now BC when it comes to October, November, right? So he's the guy, and maybe you will comment more on that hit later. I did not see it live, so I'm not going to put too much onto it. And we all know the guy who we're talking about. We don't, he's known for these kind of things. I believe he took out Bombers at the one time, and so that's one thing there. But I thought again it was good. They kind of spread the ball out decent again, and I made a joke about Keenan LaFrance, and he got a couple plays on there. I asked what his role would be, and it seems like 1 catch and 1 carry is kind of his role on the team. So happy to see that. And the kicker, Brett Loeffler, 5 for 5. You can never be upset when your kicker gets like half your points, right? So I think it was a pretty good game for the green and white. Ryan?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see this full game. I was watching the highlights earlier today. I had seen the score, I had seen the box scores previously, and I saw this game and I thought, oh man, this was a blowout. This wasn't close. I was tracking it throughout. I think the Riders defense had 8 sacks in this game, 3-4 turnovers in it. Dane Evans struggled quite a bit at quarterback here. I thought this one was a blowout. Then I watched the highlights earlier today, and I realized, oh no, this game was close right till the end. I think it was about 3 minutes left where it was still 15-13 or something like that for the Riders. And then they pull out 2 quick touchdowns there to end off the game to put it away here, which was certainly an impressive finish there. But now, seeing all the tweets throughout the day gives me a little bit of context of why the sky was falling over the offense, so to say, in Saskatchewan. It was like they put up 30 points and had a blowout victory. Cody Fajardo throws for 300 yards, rushes for 42 more. What's the problem here? Everything seems, perfect. Once you start watching those highlights, sometimes box score doesn't tell the whole story, and you start seeing, this was a scrappy game. Defense, full credit to the Riders' defense. We talked many times about so far how we thought maybe Hamilton could light up their secondary a little bit, but they shut things down very well outside of that one long touchdown to Stephen Dunbar Jr., but they shut things down. The defensive line was really good, and, the offense made the plays when they needed to at the end of the game to get the job done. So, an impressive week 1 win over a Grey Cup finalist from the Riders in week number 1. Adam, what do you think of the Hamilton side of these things? Because again, a team that went to the Grey Cup last year has a decent amount of the roster intact. Not a good-looking week 1 here for them, hey?
Not at all. And I mean, the offensive line did not look like it had a very good way of covering that Saskatchewan defensive line. I think that was the biggest part of it. Dane Evans was running for his life all the time. I mean, when you have 8 sacks against you, you're having a bad game. There is very few times that you're going to say that you get 8 sacks against you and win a game. Their offense, Stephen Dunbar had the big play, 75 yards and a touchdown. That was one play, essentially, at 71 yards on that 1 carry. Braylon Addison was very quiet. He had 8 for 12 for 72. It seemed like he had an okay game, but really he was not seen out there very often. It wasn't big plays all the time. Don Jackson had 2 for 2 for 19. And had a little bit of rushing, but not very much. 5 carries for 1 yard. I mean, when your running game is just not doing anything for you, Tim White was your leading rusher with 11 yards. I mean, that's not really going to be performance on any of this right at the moment. However, that being said, just like Hussey just said, Hamilton always plays bad in Saskatchewan. I don't know what it is. It's always showering when they come. It's always a tough game when they come to Saskatchewan, whether it's us yelling at their quarterback during a Grey Cup, or it's just them not having very much luck against the Saskatchewan defense. When Saskatchewan goes to Hamilton, it's the same thing. It's something weird about it that Hamilton just does not have good luck in Regina. Trey, what did you think of Hamilton?
Well, do many teams have good luck in Regina? So, as being a Bomber fan where we're like 0-40 there, it seems like. But yeah, I like that. I mean, they got to do better on offense. I think their defense kind of kept them in it, and Dane Evans needs to do better. Like we just talked about the last game. They gave Hamilton gave up Mazzoli to take this guy, and he didn't quite have the same amount of yards, and he had a couple picks. I think if maybe he, like you said, he seemed to be on the run. Is that maybe all they need to do is get their old line a little better, give him more time, and maybe the game would have been 30-30. Who knows, right? If he was able to stay in the pocket better. But yeah, I thought, I agree with Hussey's huddle too. Like everyone plays bad in Saskatchewan. It's just the worst place to play. Even if even if it's not a sellout, it's an awful place to play. It's an awful place to be the away team. So it's an away fan. So I think next time if they play Hamilton later, I think if Hamilton goes or Saskatchewan goes to Hamilton, I definitely think Hamilton can win that game. And I don't think the sky's falling in Hamilton. I just think they need to make sure they are giving Dane Evans more time back there. Ryan?
One more thing I wanted to just quickly bring up. You say it's always tough to be the team that goes into Saskatchewan. I don't know who the guy is that does the music for the Roughriders, but congratulations, you've done the best thing for the team intros. On the away team, they're playing Kurt Angle's theme. If you know wrestling, you'll know what I mean. Yeah, the whole crowd chanting, "You suck," as they come in. It's great. So whoever did that, thumbs up. That was great.
You gotta love things like that. They enhance the experience a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta say, the few times I've been to Saskatchewan, being at a game is better. And I don't know what it is. I find in Winnipeg, when we're on defense, we cheer, but when you go to Saskatchewan, they boo, and it's a different sound completely. Like I don't know who's maybe louder, but that Saskatchewan sound hurts the ears way more than cheering and the cowbells in Winnipeg does. So like I said, I've been to a couple Labor Days. I've been to some playoff games there. I almost have to get not a bulletproof vest, but I definitely need to cover up the blue when I'm there, right? Because you'll hear about it. But yeah, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I think who's louder depends on who you ask. Fair enough. Hamilton, for me in this game, the biggest letdown, again, not seeing the actual footage too much of the game, is just looking at the stat line here. It doesn't seem like a well-balanced game plan at all. I was actually kind of shocked. I believe Don Jackson was the only starting quarterback who we did not pick in our fantasy draft because we each picked two running backs there. I might have just said quarterback. I meant running back. Don Jackson had a fantastic 4 or 5 weeks to end the season last year. Was expecting big things from him. Sean Thomas Erlington shows up as number 1 on the depth chart for this week. I see we're starting depth chart shenanigans in week 1, just like last year. Hamilton did it so often, they do it again. Starting running back, but gets 0 carries. Backup running back, Don Jackson gets 5 carries for 1 yard. Like you said, Tim White, leading rusher with 2 carries for 11. Like, all in all in this game, there were 6, 8, 9, 11 carries, with 3 of them being receivers, 3 of them being quarterbacks, and 5 being from your running backs. That's not a balanced offensive game plan. You talk about maybe Dane Evans having a bit of a struggle here. It's because the Riders defense knew they were throwing the ball on almost any down. And, I don't know if maybe they went to Don Jackson a couple times early in the game and it wasn't working. They just decided, let's abandon it, or if it wasn't, balanced to begin with. That was very disappointing for me to see because I was high on him coming into this year. He was actually one of my higher ranked running back options behind the two I picked in our preseason fantasy draft. I definitely need to see more there from the offense for Don Jackson and the run game for the Ticats. And I think that will open things up at receiver for guys like Tim White, who I recommended in fantasy this week, but he was a big disappointment with just 7 yards through the air there. Looking at the value plays at fantasy in this game, the Riders defense putting up over nearly 7 points for every $1,000 he spent on them. They were by far the top defensive play of the week. Poppy White had himself a good game for Hamilton, over 4 points per 1,000 there. Keon Schaefer-Baker, a big game for the Riders. Jamal Morrow, a solid game. Got a little more involved in the receiving game and the return game than the running game. Still, I'd like to see more there. Stephen Dunbar Jr. that long touchdown. The big letdowns, Hamilton's defense, Don Jackson, Sean Thomas Erlington, Duke Williams, and Dane Evans. We haven't really talked about Duke Williams. We expect him to have a big role here for Saskatchewan this season. But credit to both of you on our fantasy preview last week. I wasn't looking in his direction as much, but Shaq Evans, not bad here with a 92-yard day. A lot of targets, not a lot of completions his direction, but seemed like he was the go-to receiver here for Saskatchewan, wasn't he, Adam?
Sure was. When you watch the game, for the most part, Hamilton secondary did very well on blocking up a lot of receivers. One of them was Duke Williams. They knew Duke was going to be thrown at quite a bit this game. On one play, I remember, I think it was in the second quarter, it was a 4-man cover on Duke Williams. They knew it was going to him, and they were blocking him solid. Shaq Evans finally opened it up a little bit in the third quarter, and that's where the most of the fantasy points would have come in for Shaq Evans. But yeah, he had a good game. He showed back that he's back from injury, is ready to go, and I think he's probably going to have a very good season, as well as Duke Williams. He'll still get open sometime here. You can't cover everybody, and I think he's probably going to be one that'll open up as well. And also Keon Schaefer-Baker. Canadian had a good game, had one big play in the end zone, getting a touchdown, and he was targeted a few more times. But again, that secondary of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, it was pretty good. Trey, what did you think of the Riders, I guess, receiving corps?
Yeah, I like Schaefer-Baker's attempt to hurdle guys. I guess he saw a couple Alouettes do it, so he wanted to try. I love the pure athleticism. Like, people who just put their nose up to the CFL, this was definitely a weekend to watch. Like, there's no way I'm hopping over any of those guys, and they're doing it, in full contact gear. But be real here. Yeah, I liked how the ball got spread around. Like, Shaq Evans was obviously the main target, but that's the key to any offense in this, especially the CFL. You can't go to one guy. It's not, it's not NFL with 4 downs, so you can just throw it 3 times to the same guy and hopefully he's got to catch it 1 out of the 3. You actually got to move the ball around and get open, and tons of space to do it. So I really liked Saskatchewan. I'm actually, again, more personally, I'm getting a little worried about Labor Day Banjo Bowl already, because I think this game could be a good one, especially how upset Saskatchewan probably is at Winnipeg over the last few years. But I really like their offense. I'm really high on Fajardo. Again, he's one of those guys. I'd put him at like the B tier, but he is so close to being the A tier. All he needs is a great cup, a couple of great cups, and playoff wins in Winnipeg, something to really cement it. And I think he's got the team around him to do that.
I think he does. I think, though, let's face it, he's trying whatever he can. Whether it's on the ground with 42 yards, I believe, rushing right now this game. But one thing I want to bring up is he's got to take some chances. He's got to bring up some chances, or he's been taking some chances. He's been sliding properly, and I do have to bring up that hit from Simone Lawrence. There's no reason that let's face it, I hope it's just a coincidence. Game 1 2 years ago, Zach Collaros takes off running for Saskatchewan. Simone Lawrence nails him. That's the end of Zach Collaros' season, until he went to Winnipeg and won the Grey Cup. This year, first game of the season, Cody Fajardo runs down the field, absolutely nailed by Simone Lawrence. Elbow out. I don't care. I watched this one about 3 times now. I really, really, really did not like that one from Simone Lawrence. He's had a reputation of making silly hits in this league on quarterbacks at wrong times. He did get the 15-yard foul on this one, but I mean, let's face it, 15 yards is a small, very, very bad consolation prize for what could be a career or a season. Let's face it, it's got to stop. I will be very disappointed if I just see a fine out of the CFL on this one. I really hope they give him a game to think about what he's been doing out there. The guy is sliding. He's not going face first or head first like Zach Collaros did on that play in Ottawa. He was down, he was sliding, and like I say, the flag, both referees instantly throw yard flags. They know it was a bad hit. To my opinion, I didn't see, like I said, it's a fast, football's a fast game. It's hard to see what happened immediately at that one, but once you watch it again, by all means, the guy should get a game probably for that one. Guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I do. One thing I do respect about Simone Lawrence is he plays hard, right? I'll give him that. He plays hard. He's always out there, trying to be the best on the field. And a lot of times he is one of the best defensive players on the field. But there's a lot of hits that are borderline and probably past the borderline coming from him here as well. So, I'm all about team safety. Let's keep the players out there so that they can keep performing. Like, hits like, William Stanback, big injury there for him. I didn't necessarily think that one was too dirty of a play there. Sometimes freak accidents happen in football and you get long-term injuries due to that as well. But I never want to see a long-term injury for a guy as a result of another guy doing something he shouldn't have done. If it's accidental, that is football. That's the sport. But just play safe. Just keep the players safe out there. It's best for the league as a whole. So yeah, I agree with you. I did not like this one bit from Simone Lawrence. Trey?
No, yeah, I agree. I'm not like super supportive of a lot of the extra rules they're adding, pass interference, I think is so touchy and all these extra things. But hitting the head is one. And like we compared it to the Winnipeg one. Yeah, like I said, Claros is the idiot diving head first. Like and it looked like most of his head hit the ground anyway, more than the Ottawa defenseman. But yeah, on the Hamilton one, Simone Lawrence, like we said, he's had a couple issues with this. I can't remember if his punishments in the past, but he's a clear repeat offender. And you're right, Ryan. He plays to the whistle kind of guy, and maybe 10 years ago it wouldn't matter, but it's not 10 years ago, right? We have these rules in play. I wouldn't put him more than a game. You're probably going to see the fine if I'm going to be realistic, but you are right, Adam. He should get a game. But again, we know the appeal process in the CFL. When is that game going to be served? Maybe, he could appeal it pretty quick. And next thing we know, he's maybe not sitting out till October, right? So it'll probably just be a fine, but I don't know. We could talk about this one all night too, because it's a lot different than the Winnipeg one where we just said the guy jumped forward. It's a tough one, but I think he should get a game.
I'll say it like this. I mean, if the guy was on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I love him for his competitiveness and his motor. He's one of those guys that goes whistle to whistle, works like it's his last play every game, or every time he's on the field, the whistle blows, it's like it's his last play. And he goes hard, and I give him credit for that. But there is a line. And I mean, if he was in Saskatchewan and he nailed Dane Evans like that, I'm saying it's a game. It's not the Saskatchewan bias in this one. It's happened many of times before, and it's got to stop. And if you want to make an example and say right off the bat, week one, we will not tolerate a hit like that on any quarterback, it's the right time to do it. It's week one. Week two, Hamilton, I think, has I'm not even sure I think Calgary this week, but you know what? It's time to put your foot down on those headshots. So, anyways, moving on.
Yeah, and rounding out this game here, the betting lines on this one. How did we do, Trey? Did we pass?
Yeah, we all took Saskatchewan to at -2.5, and they won by 17, even though it was late. This was a game I was actually probably the most confident in all week, because the Thursday nighter we both disagreed. Montreal, Calgary. My thing with the Ottawa Winnipeg, I was actually scared for the longest time Winnipeg was going to win by 10, more than 10, so we would lose that way, but that clearly didn't happen. So yeah, this was the game I was the most confident in, and at this point I'm 3-0 and you guys are 2-1 heading into Saturday night's game in Vancouver.
And we go to that one next here. Wow, 34,082 people at BC Place Stadium. Packing the house, getting treated to a pregame concert by One Republic, and getting treated to quite the show by one Nathan Rourke and co. 59-15, the final score. The BC Lions over the Edmonton Elks. What was it? 42-6 at halftime, I think, in this one. Nathan Rourke, 5 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 2 on the ground. James Butler, 4 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 2 through the air. This was a total beat down, and this was about the most perfect night you could ever imagine for the BC Lions. And I really am excited to see what this means going forward for this team, because their owner, you got to give Amar Doman so much credit for, and his whole team, for promoting the heck out of this game, getting people in those seats. And then the question becomes, okay, now you got them in the seats, but what can you do out on the field to keep them in the seats? I tell you, any new football fans that may have come to the game, and I'm sure there were some who came just to see One Republic perform, they may think the BC Lions of 2022 are the greatest team in CFL or football history after what they witnessed in this game, because it was quite the show from start to finish. Nathan Rourke, the Canadian kid at quarterback, I think may have finished with a perfect passer rating actually in this game. He had 3 incompletions on the night, almost 300 yards, and 5 touchdowns in total. Trey, what do you think of the explosiveness we saw here from the Lions?
I was shocked. Like I couldn't watch this game live either. I'm working at night and I'm checking the score and highlights and everything, and I thought my phone was broken. I thought something was wrong, and you got to tip your hat to Nathan Rourke. It's great to see a Canadian kid go off like that. But I also like it. It wasn't completely in the air. They ran the ball down Edmonton's throat, almost 190 yards. I'm doing quick math here, 180 something yards on the night, split between Butler, Rourke, and O'Connor, right? So that's not bad either. You got to keep running the ball, and we all know that's how you're going to win later in the year. And it's nice that they did it to start off the year. Also really liked what you saw in the receiving core. Whitehead, Hatcher, Burnham, they all got the ball. They all did their thing, and their defense stood up too. Like I don't know what you guys think, Ryan. I was pretty shocked when I was seeing the score. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, BC's defense, particular. I said preseason, I thought maybe BC was going to be the underrated best defense in the CFL. Granted, they're playing Edmonton, and I wasn't too high on the Elks offense coming into the year. But TJ Lee, 2 interceptions, one of the best defensive backs in the league. They got 4 interceptions here. They got a couple of sacks. Huge play by the defense. Loved everything I saw here from the Lions in this game. What about you, Adam?
No, I'm the same way. I mean, first of all, Mr. Doman, take a bow. That game was just right when it started. I mean, I was kind of watching the Rider game and how it finished off, but I was glancing down at my phone, and you seen just orange outside of BC Place Stadium and having a great pregame, then going into the stadium and doing One Republic. And then, of course, the game itself. I mean, Nathan Rourke has an 89% completion percentage. You had James Butler, who essentially came out of nowhere and had 2 receiving touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and just had a game. And then Nick Arbuckle, unfortunately, looked like a deer in a headlight, no pun intended. Sanoni Tilamala, 3 quarterback sacks and 4 tackles in defense. Just overall, BC, there was nothing the BC could do wrong in this game. I guess Edmonton could have done a little more right, but you know what? BC was just absolutely dominant right from when the gun went off to when the gun went off at the end. That's all that can really be said about this one before even digging in.
Yeah, this was about as close as we could get to when do you wave the mercy flag or the mercy rule here in week 1. Can't say enough good things. And, a lot of people giving the Lions a knock at quarterback because inexperienced Canadian quarterback Nathan Rourke. And do I think he can replicate a game like this every single game this season? No, I'd be a fool to. That being said, if he could play Edmonton every game, he's got 10 touchdowns in his last 2 games he's played against the Elks. So if he can keep that trend going and replicate that against some other teams as well, I'm excited to see what the next game brings for the Lions. It sucks that they have a bye week this week, which, after all of the momentum they generated from this game, now you got 2 weeks till the next game here. But I want to see what that attendance is like next game at BC Place for the Lions here. And hopefully they get a lot of new tickets from that fantastic performance. Let's look over at the other side of this game, because we hyped up all offseason. All the things they did off the field were fantastic. They are getting the momentum going into the season. It's going to be a bounce back year for Edmonton. And that lasted, a minute and a half into this one before the wheels fell off the cart. I think there's a non-zero chance Chris Jones is booking his tickets back to Alabama to coach high school football before this game reached halftime. Of course, I'm kidding on that, but the debut of Chris Jones back in Edmonton certainly did not go as planned here. How did this fall apart so quickly, Trey?
Yeah, just looking at the stats, the defense was all over Nick Arbuckle, 3 interceptions. Unless you're the 2021 Bombers, you're not going to win much throwing that many interceptions in a game, right? It's tough. And I think that's kind of the question I posed to you guys. Who's going to be starting quarterback for the Elks week 2, like week 3 even? Like, how long of a leash does this guy have? Chris Jones is a no crap kind of guy. So are we going to see, we saw Trey Ford a couple, but he threw a pick too, right? So are we going to see, who are we going to see? Like, who is available if they need another guy? Like, I don't even know. So I think their offense, their defense, of course, got picked apart, but I'm going to go on the offensive side. I'm going to say Nathan Rourke and James Butler beat the defense more than the defense lost. But on the offensive side too, I think they just were completely trashed. Like, they need to really do something better. I need a guy. Yeah, I just can't believe 3 interceptions, Nick Arbuckle. They need to do better. Or 4 interceptions on the game. You need to do better than that, Adam.
Absolutely. The Nick Arbuckle just had a terrible game, but here's my thing. If you're the head coach of a football team and the defensive coordinator of a football team, your defense better perform. And this defense did nothing at all. And it's not from they've got a few pieces in there that they should be performing. This to me comes down to 2 things. One, either you've got to really check that defensive line, because it had no pressure on Nathan Rourke all night against the BC Lions offensive line that's known for not being maybe the strongest in the league, which is very concerning. Like I said, Nathan Rourke pretty much could read most of the news lines about him before he actually was able to need to throw a football. 6 tackles by Tristan DeCoud. Otherwise, really, there was nothing out of the defense for the Edmonton Elks. I just, like I say, if I was Chris Jones, and like I said, everybody's always said Chris Jones, the defensive guru. Chris Jones, the guy that knows defense is better, defensive whisperer. Well, if that's going to be what you whisper to your defense, maybe you better consider changing the tune, because that was bad. I don't know. Like I say, to me, I'm wondering if this wasn't even maybe a little bit of that Chris Jones confidence that, oh, look, there's a Canadian quarterback in. Okay, we're going to have fun here. And then all of a sudden, oh, he's actually pretty good. I won't say that right now that it's Chris Jones is just overconfident in this one, but man, there's a lot of things to go wrong here for the Edmonton Elks defense. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, as a whole, and the biggest stat line to me that speaks to the problems here for Edmonton is total penalty yardage on the game. BC had 4 penalties for 30 yards. Edmonton had 12 for 129. Like, I don't know how many of those just came from frustrations from being down. Guys start cheating on plays a little bit, maybe a little pass interference here and there. But you can't give up that kind of penalty yardage. That's not going to help your defense either. The turnovers were at inopportune times. They put BC in good position. Edmonton just had nothing going for them. You look at the stat line, okay, Nick Arbuckle, 254 yards passing. That's not terrible. The picks are obviously bad, but a lot of that stat line, I think, was padded by garbage time being basically the entire second half of this game. There was nothing to play for in the second half. The Elks did score a touchdown early, and you thought, are we going to see a repeat of that Saskatchewan BC game from week 1 last season where the Riders, I think, went up 31-0 in the first half, and then BC brought it back to a field goal. But No, it wasn't meant to be here. Kenny Lawler, the leading receiver for the Elks. Darrell Walker had a good game there too. All things considered, as good as it can be in this situation. I liked seeing that. I'll try to find a positive. I'll try to find a couple positives here for Edmonton because they could use some right now. I liked what I saw from Darrell Walker. Like I said, I want to see a bounce back season from him. I thought, that opening touchdown drive for Edmonton in the second half, I think it was alternating pass to Lawler, pass to Walker, pass to Lawler, pass to Walker. That's your two top receivers. You want to see those guys get going, even if it's in a meaningless half of football. And Sergio Castillo, 3 for 3 on kicking in this game. A solid game for him there as well. Jalen Marshall, maybe, some decent return yardage there. It's the position that struggled for Edmonton. But by and large, this was a rough game all the way through. It just seemed like they were not prepared at all for what came their way. And I need to see how Edmonton bounces back coming into this next week, because I said it last week on our preview show. I think Edmonton can be a good team, especially defensively later in the year. But I don't think they have the pieces on paper right now. And the Chris Jones effect takes a bit of time to take effect. And we're going to see it later in the season. But I think it's going to be tough going here in week 1. And you know what? I'm sure we'll talk a little more on our preview show about this. But how do you go home now if you're the Elks and get ready for this game against the Riders? Again, the wind kind of out of the sails of everything they did this offseason. What do you think of that, Adam?
Yeah, I would not want to be them going back into this. I mean, let's face it. I know that their president is going to be hyping up this game. I mean, I seen a cool little thing on Twitter today of them talking about whatever the forecasted high today is what it's going to cost you to get a ticket to the Elks game. Cool idea. But that being said, I don't know if I'd want to be the Edmonton Elks lining up against the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week. Let's face it, the Riders did some serious damage with their defense to a Hamilton Tiger Cats team that's just coming off of a Grey Cup Finals loss. This one could be ugly, I think, and we'll see what the betting ends up at. But this one might be a good one for Trey, for him to talk about, because I think he might be able to make some money on this next one. That being said, I hope Edmonton prepares and does well, and let's hope Saskatchewan maybe doesn't overlook Edmonton maybe a little bit here as well. But that's all for the preview show. Trey, what do you think about Edmonton hosting next week?
Yeah, I'd be scared. Like I said, the only thing worse than playing in Saskatchewan is having Saskatchewan come to you, right? They're always in, I think Saskatchewan, the way they played, I know we're getting into the preview a little bit, but it's really hard to have any positives about Edmonton, right? So, yeah, this is the team that needs the bye week 2 over BC. Maybe they can trade their schedule around or something, because, yeah, I would not want to be Edmonton right now. When did they play? They have till Saturday, so they have the full week of preparation, I guess, but yeah, I definitely would. Definitely be working hard this week. But quick point: if you had a time travel from 10 years ago, and you were telling them the attendance of this week, how shocked do you think they would be that if you said BC had just shy of or just over 34,000 people, but then Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and Calgary were not quite as full as it could be? That's what I think a big storyline of this whole week too, as we're coming into that. The 3 teams that you think, back-to-back banner in Winnipeg, that should be almost a sellout. Saskatchewan, I mean, other than Adam and seating, what else is there to do in Saskatchewan on a Saturday night, right? And then you have Calgary, their attendance has been slowly going down too, because, they're not the team powerhouse they used to be. So I think that's a huge storyline we should take, great for BC, but what the heck's going on in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg that they can't sell out week 1? So either of you guys.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I know Saskatchewan, actually, you're making a great point there, Trey. Very poor attendance in Saskatchewan this week. I mean, game 1, opening night, you're right about Saskatchewan. There's not a whole lot to do usually on a Saskatchewan Saturday night. It's like a Sudbury Saturday night, except without the song. It's amazing. I think there was maybe, I'd want to say 18,000 people in the stadium. They announced 28 in Saskatchewan, which is probably mostly season tickets and a little bit extra. But no, there was no 28,000 in Saskatchewan on Saturday. Winnipeg, I didn't really notice much in the crowd. Guys, what was that like?
It seemed like a pretty full crowd. It seemed loud. Like, what they announced the attendance at in Winnipeg? Was it 26, 20?
Yeah.
Something like that. But it seemed to me almost like it was bigger than that. People were loud. They were excited for that game there. But the attendance numbers, down a little bit around the league, which makes it even more impressive that BC was able to pull this off in this one. And I'd love to see more teams do what they were able to do in this game. Quickly looking at the fantasy lines here in this one for Edmonton, BC. BC stacked the top value plays. James Butler, almost 6.5 points per $1,000. Nathan Rourke, almost 6. He was the top quarterback. Butler was the top running back. I think they both hit 40 points or more. Keon Hatcher got himself a fresh new contract this week for his performance in this game. He put up almost 5 points per 1,000. He was a real cheap value play. BC's defense, 4.06. Jalen Marshall of the Elks got involved in the return game and at receiver. He was a solid value play as well. Top 5 letdowns. The Elks defense putting up -4 points on the week. Yeah, that's a fantasy killer right there. Nick Arbuckle, less than a point per 1,000 he spent on him. Brian Burnham at just 0.74 was one of the biggest letdowns here. The Lions put up 9 touchdowns, and Brian Burnham and Lucky Whitehead had 0 combined. I don't know how that happened, truthfully, but it did. Emmanuel Arsenault for Edmonton, not a great game for him, and Dominic Rhymes for BC. So Lions win big, but even a couple of their players, maybe it's the high prices when it comes to CFL fantasy, still falling on the bottom end of the value there. Trey, betting odds betting lines, betting successes for this game against Edmonton, BC. How did we do to round out week 1?
Well, guys, going into it, we disagreed. Adam and Ryan took BC to beat the spread at 3.5. I thought Edmonton would cover. Clearly, I was wrong. That was an absolute blowout. So we all went 3-1 on the weekend. So if we did that, new single game betting, we all would have made money. But none of us would have hit the parlay. But that's okay. That's not a bad first week. I can't say very often I go 3-1 opening week in any kind of sport because it's usually the worst week to bet. But yeah, I'm pretty good, guys. And we're kind of talking about maybe predicting next week. I would think Saskatchewan's going to get a decent one against Edmonton. I'm interested to see Winnipeg and Ottawa's. It went from 9.5 before kickoff. It went down to 6.5. So I'm really interested. Nothing's up yet on play now, but those are things I'm going to be really looking at. And then the other games, I think it's hard to put what Toronto might be because we haven't seen them play, but they're going to play who they've got, the Alouettes, again, an Alouettes team that's pretty decent. And then Calgary, Hamilton, I think that one will be pretty even. So I'm pretty sure Montreal and Toronto will be even. Calgary, Hamilton will be even. Saskatchewan, watch them get 10 points. And then Winnipeg, Ottawa, I have no idea. Watch Ottawa be favored, actually, in this one on Friday night.
Yeah, and we'll see what the lines are, and we'll talk about them more in our preview on Wednesday. Overall straight-up picks, I went 4-0 in CFL Pick'em this week. I'm pretty sure last season, again, didn't get 4 games right till week 3. So much better start to the season here. As we round out our, as we move on from talking about the individual games, let's talk a little bit about the CFL fantasy updates for this week. So in our little fantasy league, a good week for myself and Adam. We finished, I think I had 110 points. Adam, you had about 100. I left James Butler on my bench, and I'm still crying about it. That could have been an extra 45 points. Adam had Lucky Whitehead on the bench. Could have picked up a couple more there. Trey, a bit of a rough start to the season for you and Mike, though. A bit of a ways behind, but hey, still room to catch up. Quick thoughts on how your fantasy rosters did this week.
Well, it would have been better if I would have thought that completely just dawned on me that Eric Rogers got traded to Toronto a while ago. I mean, that would have helped my fantasy just a little bit. But other than that, it was a great week for me. I mean, Shaq Evans got me some great points for a later pick. I was real happy with that. Keon Schaefer-Baker got me some points. Kadeem Carey got me some big points. overall, I mean, I had a good week, except for, like I say, I don't know where I was thinking that Eric Rogers is still on the Calgary Stampeders. Anyways, Trey, what did you think of your week?
Yeah, I'm not great at fantasy, so we'll see how this comes. If I come back now, it'd be one of the biggest comebacks of fantasy history because I more know what the score is going to be and, like I said, betting line. But who's going to get me that points? I don't really care usually. But I'm going to try again. I was confident in my team. I had the first pick, and I don't want to say I made the wrong choice, but I think I hope Winnipeg starts putting up more points because I know I went Winnipeg heavy. But yeah, well, it's all right. It's a long year, 17 more games. Well, I guess there's 20 more weeks. So got a long ways to go, guys.
Yeah, the season doesn't end after week one. I'm just happy that Curly Gittins Jr. was on a bye week, forcing me to put Nathan Rourke in my lineup as my only other Canadian. Otherwise, I would have started Cody Fajardo. Had a good week too, but Nathan Rourke was in my lineup. He was also in my lineup in our CFL podcast fantasy league over on the official CFL fantasy website. Our matchups this past week, you guys both had some tough matchups. Adam facing Brazilian Ty from the 2 and Out CFL podcast. You did unfortunately fall short there. Trey going up against Andrew from the Turf District, I believe the regular season champion last year. So tough draw for you there. He pulls out the win. Both those guys putting up over 100 points. I was taking on Oz from the Rouge, White, and Blue podcast, and starting off the season strong here from Mr. Commissioner. Top score of the week for myself, 119.8 points. Thank you, Nathan Rourke. Thank you, Kadeem Carey, and the rest of the squad there. We'll take a look on Wednesday at who we're facing coming into the next week, but make sure you check out all of those other great podcasts and check out all the other great podcasts from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network. Let's move over into let's do our players of the week to round out week number 1, and then we'll finish it off with everybody's favorite topic, the power rankings. Players of the week. Who for you, Adam, is the week 1 player or players of the week?
I got to take one, maybe 12 players from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Going into the season, the defense was told, you've lost a lot of pieces. Ed Gainey, you've lost Luchez Purifoy, you lost other guys in that defensive line like Micah Johnson, who was on the other side for Hamilton this week. You lost a lot of pieces in the defensive line like Jonathan Woodard. Yet that Saskatchewan Roughriders defense went in, had just one heck of a game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. 8 sacks. I think it was 5 turnovers in the game. Just an amazing job by the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense. I mean, it's hard to give it to one guy. I mean, Pete Robertson had an amazing game. The guy that I think is having must have taken a drink out of the fountain of youth. Charleston Hughes had a forced fumble and also a sack. So we did get to see that Surf was up in Saskatchewan. So to me, if this Roughriders defense keeps this going, this is going to be one fun year for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Let's see it in week 2 against the Edmonton Elks. Trey, who was your pick of the week?
Are you sure you just want to give it to 12 guys and not 13? Or sorry.
Put myself on mute.
As soon as I heard the 12 guys. But yeah, I'm going to give a big shout out to the kickers, man. 21 for 23 week 1. That's 63 points across the league, and that's not counting Rouges. I wasn't going to go through and see how many Rouges were scored this week. The longest, 52 by Hamilton's Michael Magala. Holy. And he went 2 for 3. Brett Lothar, though, went 5 for 5 with the longest, 48. But there's 2 guys I want to give my co-player of the week to, and that's the guys who nailed the game winners. Calgary's Rene Paredes, he went 3 for 3, longest being 41, and of course getting the game winner there. And Mark Leggio, he missed an extra point, and I was, I think, pretty upset about that. But he did go 2 for 2 for field goals, including the game-winning one. His only longest one was 25, so they definitely got him close. But you got to give it to those kickers when they get the game-winning field goals. The guy who sits on the bench, maybe punts, doesn't do much, but then his foot comes really important in the last minute of the game. Ryan?
We're not going to end this week one show and have the BC Lions put up 59 points on the board and not have a single Lion named player of the week. And we're going to go for multiple Lions here. Week one, we were going to pick one player of the game each, but none of us are sticking to that. So the rules are out the window now. Who knows where this will go throughout the season. But Nathan Rourke and James Butler have to be my players of the week. Nathan Rourke, 26 of 29, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, 78 yards rushing by the starting quarterback for the Lions. 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. I'm honestly surprised they didn't sit him at the start of the second half when this game was out of reach. They kept him in. He kept putting up the points and the stats on the board. Impressive game for him. And James Butler, I was high on him coming into the year. 17 carries, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also put up 2 touchdowns through the air. Touchdown machine, James Butler. You got to love it. You got to hand to them. Those 2 players integral to this absolute dominant victory for the Lions here in week one. So those are our players of the week. Congrats to all of them. Let's get into, to round out the show, let's take a look here at our power rankings for week one in the CFL. Trey, let's start off with you. You've got Saskatchewan at 1, Winnipeg at 2, BC, Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, Hamilton, the Atlantic Schooners, the Las Vegas Posse, the Baltimore Stallions, and all the way down at number 12, the Edmonton Elks. Tell us how you ended up with these rankings.
Well, we'll start at the top here. I thought Saskatchewan played a pretty good game. I thought they played a way better game than Winnipeg, and they were kind of the number 1-2 coming into this season. So I'm going to give them the crown after week one. And Winnipeg, too. Again, it was a tight win, but I'm going to keep them up there. I like what BC did, but I want to see if it was BC doing great or Edmonton being garbage, right? I want to see that first. Like you said earlier, it really sucks they have a bye week 2. Toronto was the toughest one to place for me. I don't know how to rank a team that we haven't really seen yet. And then out of all the winners, Calgary was probably my least impressed by them, so that's why they go 5th. Montreal was my most impressive loss. Ottawa, 2. Ottawa I would have put higher up, but it was really tough. I think the official one, CFL, has them 3rd or 4th, if I'm not mistaken, or 5th, like way higher up. Hamilton, again, I think they could have did better in Saskatchewan, and there's no part of me that could have given Edmonton number 9. They just played so horrible. So that's where the undefeated Schooners comes in at 9. I probably messed up. I should have put the Stallions at 10, the only American team to win the Grey Cup, and then the Posse as well there and then Edmonton at 12.
Amazing. I love it. Adam, you had Saskatchewan at number 1, BC at number 2, Winnipeg at 3, then Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto at 6, Montreal at 7, Hamilton at 8, and if you're watching the video version, a considerable amount of space before we get down to Edmonton at number 9. What went into these for you?
Well, I was debating to see if I should put the Miami Manatees in between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Edmonton Elks. You know what? The Saskatchewan Roughriders had a great week. I mean, the offense, of course, they need to get going earlier than maybe, 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but it was good enough to make them number 1 this week. BC had an awesome game again, like we've been describing all here, and they deserve to move way up. I mean, they prove that they're going to be probably a pretty good team this year. So I think they'll probably come down a little bit, but you know what? Special props to them for this week for number 2. The Blue Bombers. They don't ever say how many or how you win. They say how many do you win. So that's why the Blue Bombers, they still won. So you know what? They still get the 3rd spot in my vote. Calgary is still pretty strong out in McMahon, and they played a pretty good game against the Montreal Alouettes. They probably deserve number 4. Ottawa, again, tough loss against the Bombers, but you know what? They played well. They should hold their heads high, and they get them next week back home in Ottawa. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Toronto, again, like everybody, how do you mark a team that's only had a bye week for week 1? I think they're going to come fired up. They got that extra week of practice in. They're going to play good against Montreal, who I have down as number 7. And that's the only reason they're probably that low is because of William Stanback and that injury. I'm still a little questionable what's going to happen there. In running back, yes, we had a good game from the backup running back. We'll see how it goes on from here. The Hamilton Tiger Cats just didn't put really much of a good effort in. this week against the Roughriders. I thought maybe they would have came out and at least maybe challenged that secondary a little bit better than that, but they didn't. So they're number 8. And I really had to think about if I really wanted to even let Edmonton rank this week. But I figured, you know what, they still technically are in the CFL, I guess. You know what, there's a lot to work on in Edmonton. However, I don't think they're going to end up in the bottom yet this year. I think they're still going to come up and start moving up the power rankings soon.
All right. And for myself, I've got BC at number 1, Saskatchewan at 2, Winnipeg at 3, Calgary at 4, Toronto at 5, Ottawa at 6, Montreal at 7, Hamilton at 8, and a little bit of distance before the Edmonton Elks at number 9, a little less than Adam had, and no teams in between, unlike Trey. BC, I have number 1 simply because the explosive victory to start the season. They won this week on and off the field. They were the best team of the week. So I put them at number 1. Challenge will be where I put them next week, because I generally don't think you should fall in the rankings on a bye week, but they are on one next week, and I don't know if they'll stay number 1. We'll see. The Riders, an impressive win there. Really impressed by that defense. That puts them at number 2. Winnipeg and Calgary, the 2 other teams to win this week, they were kind of equal to me. I didn't love what I saw from them in their games, but they did pull out the win. I put Winnipeg ahead at 3 just simply because overall in the season, I think I like what their roster makeup a little bit better. I put Toronto at 5 because it's right in the middle between all the teams that won this week, all the teams that lost. I got nothing positive. I got nothing negative to say for them. So perfectly neutral on the Argos. Of the teams that lost this week, Ottawa is the highest for me at number 6. I was really impressed by them, even though they lost. Clean up a couple of those mistakes, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Montreal down at number 7. They came close against Calgary, but I was also concerned about that injury to William Stanback. That's definitely a big blow there. And need more consistency from the Alouettes there. The Ticats at number 8, had high hopes for them coming into this week, and they struggled against that Riders defense, a defense I thought they could pick apart a little bit. And then Edmonton, self-explanatory why they come down at number 9 in my rankings. I think, they're going to find their way yet this season. They're going to rise up these rankings, but for right now they do. Hopefully very understandably.
Sorry, can you hang on there for a second, Ryan? I just want to take a picture here real quick of Trey marking Saskatchewan as number 1 above the Bombers, if you don't mind. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Thanks.
Perfect.
My great pick, man. I'm pretty high on the Roughriders, and I have to go to a family social next weekend with a lot of Roughrider fans. So, I'm not going to be wearing the green quite yet. Maybe in September, depending on what our bet is. But real quick while we're here too, I don't want to hear anyone say anything about Edmonton and Calgary having 3 or 4 days of practice extra too, because it did not help Edmonton, and it barely helped Calgary, right, guys? So, hopefully that's something that's put to bed too with the CBA talks.
Did they over-prepare? Is that the problem?
Absolutely. That was total over preparedness by Edmonton. And next week it should be just simply walkthroughs for the whole week.
Yeah, just show up at the game.
You're playing Saskatchewan. What practice do you need?
Anyways, that's it for our week 1 power rankings. Let us know on Twitter what you think of them. I'm sure you'll disagree, because generally people do when it comes to power rankings. So I'd love to hear who's you think are the most accurate and what you would change from what you've seen here. I think that pretty much does it for our week 1 recap. Coming up on the podcast here, we've got our weekly preview coming up this Wednesday. We'll take a look at week 2 in the CFL. You can join us live, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, 8 p.m. Saskatchewan time, other time zones. You can convert accordingly. We're live over on YouTube, the Canadian Football Countdown there, Facebook, CF Countdown Pod, facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod, Twitter @CF Countdown Pod, twitch.tv/CF Countdown Pod, and the Game Time TV YouTube page as well. Shout out to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Join us Wednesday night. We'll go through and preview the top storylines for each game, talk through the fantasy options available, make our picks, and talk about the best bets again of the week as well. So look forward to that Wednesday night, out on the podcast feed Thursday morning. And then next week, we'll be back here recapping week 2 in the CFL. Mike should be back from his week off, and we'll be ready to go. I'm sure have lots of thoughts on what he's seen from the CFL thus far. So look forward to that next Monday night live as well here on the podcast. Guys, as we get ready to wrap things up here, where can people find everything you've got going on? Adam?
Yeah, so you can find me over on Twitter at AdamStewart1. I don't have a whole lot right now, except for, there's a big hockey game coming up on Wednesday that me and Ryan are probably both have vested interests in, and I'll be probably talking a little bit of trash during that, just a little bit. I mean, I did lots of it during Edmonton's time, so I pretty much am out of it now. But yeah, no, follow me over at AdamStewart1. Got lots of farm stuff, got lots of egg stuff. Anything really going on, that's where I post it. So, Trey, where can guys find you?
Yeah, on Twitter, you can find me at TreyMBHarness. Want to talk anything football, definitely if you want to make fun of me for having Saskatchewan #1, you can find me there. You want to talk horse racing, I am the voice of Manitoba Harness Racing. So, there's I think I mentioned last week, there's a big horse harness race in Southern Ontario this weekend, the Pepsi North American Cup. Pretty big deal. So if you want to check that out, come see me. You want to talk about Star Wars, you want to talk about Call of Duty, you want to talk about whatever, at TreyMBHarness, man. I'm on my phone all day. Ryan, what about you?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42, starts with a K. And this should be a fun week, Adam. My Tampa Bay Lightning going head-to-head with Adam's Colorado Avalanche in the Stanley Cup Finals. We're set to podcast together at least once, twice, maybe 3 times over the course of the finals. So I'm sure we will hate each other by the end of this week. But you know what? Maybe we'll strike a deal here and be friends no matter what the result is. Well, hopefully.
I mean, let's face it, I don't know how much lightning will strike, but we'll still strike some good jokes and everything else in that. So,
well, looking forward to that. Of course, that should be a lot of fun, and just so excited to have CFL back. It was so fun to check out all the games and talk all the fantasy and everything we saw from the games this week as well. You can follow us on Twitter at CF Countdown Pod for a lot of other things there. You can also check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter. And whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things like, comment, subscribe, rate the show, review, share it with your friends, help us grow the show. Last week's episode, our week 1 preview, very well received episode. We appreciate everybody who's tuning in this season. We've got a lot of fun content to come, and we appreciate all the feedback as well. And as always, on behalf of our panel here tonight, Trey Colbeck, Adam Stewart, I'm Ryan Coop saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.